Hello.
Hi.
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 Hello.
I'm curious about...
I'm curious about
Building open, authentic, loving relationships.
I'm curious about jealousy.
I'm curious about polyamory.
Does it just mean that you're fucking all the time?
How can I tell my parents that my partner is already married?
I'm curious about...
How do you know when you're too busy to have another relationship?
I'm curious about dominant and subordinate relationships.
I'm curious about sexual health.
How can relationships evolve with people as they grow and change?
My name is Effy Blue, and this is the Curious Fox podcast. Curious Fox is a community for those who challenge the status quo in love, sex, and relationships. Every month, we pick a theme anchored in these subjects. I invite a diverse set of panelists, and we bravely explore the theme through personal stories. This month, we decided to tackle the complex feeling of compersion. Compersion is a term used by those who are practicing non-monogamy to describe the feeling of joy when their partner is enjoying another connection, interaction, or a relationship with someone else. Although it's said the concept of compersion was originally coined by the Charister Commune in San Francisco in the 50s, the feeling itself is as old as the humankind. In this contemporary iteration, it may seem like an impossible feeling for some people. Feeling joy because your partner is having an intense connection with someone else? Crazy, right? Well, maybe not as crazy as you think. Firstly, the feeling itself is not isolated in non-monogamy or romantic relationships. We have all felt that burst of joy for a friend who finally got their dream job, or a family member looking radiant on their wedding day. We know what that feels like. The question is, can it be achieved in situations where jealousy may arise? Can it really be a viable option then? In preparation for this month's panel, I took a deep dive into this elusive yet universal feeling, when what I found was thoroughly surprising. The idea of pure joy, unadulterated by self-interest, is not something non-monogamous people invented. It's in fact ancient. It's one of the 4 virtues of Buddhism, also known as the 4 immeasurables. In Sanskrit, it's called mudita. This was a huge discovery for me. The English translation of the Sanskrit word provided me with the most clarity on this virtue. Sympathetic Joy. In both Buddhism and its more contemporary iteration, compersion is often mentioned as the opposite of jealousy. It's also regarded as the most difficult virtue to cultivate. And this was not lost on LT, one of our panelists who explains, despite teaching classes on compersion, he has yet to get his Captain Compersion badge. Cultivating this feeling also has enormous power, as you'll hear from Eric, another panelist this month. He attributes his closeness with his partner of 7 years and now wife to actively developing this feeling. As usual, the conversation took natural turns and expanded into other areas, only to find its way back to this beautiful feeling that makes my heart burst with joy. Upon a question from one of the Foxes, the panelists and I got to reminisce our favorite compersive moments, with Clara sharing a heartwarming story of being on the receiving end of compersion. Curious Fox socials are not and will never be the final word on any topic. We solely aim to encourage curiosity and provide a space for exploration through connection and story. We encourage you to listen with an open and curious mind, and we'll look forward to your feedback. Enjoy the episode. Good evening. Thank you for coming. I want to pass the mic on to my collaborator Jackie at the back, and she has a few things to say to you.
Hi, and welcome, particularly to the folks who are new and the folks who continue to join us. We are Curious Fox. There's a number of things that we do here. So you are at a Curious Fox social. The goal is that you have opportunities to socialize with each other and meet each other before and after, that we have a particular topic that you're going to hear on. There's going to be opportunities for you to ask questions. We also do Curious Fox Presents, where we have an educator or a specialist come in, and they do a workshop on a particular topic. And so we're going to be doing something on the 21st on Kink 101. So in case folks folks are interested in learning all things kink and asking some questions and exploring that, then join us on the 21st. Every month we have a different theme. So this month the theme was about being open. Next month is the theme about and giving, and then next month is love. We also have Curious Fox socials. So we have little parties that go on and social events. And then soirees. And then we have Consider This. Consider This is an annual conference that we do. It's like TED Talk, where we have different specialists come from around the country, share on different topics, and we ask you just to consider those things and think through those things. So if you're interested in all those things, if those things sounded new to you, then we welcome you to follow us on Instagram or on Facebook at We Are Curious Foxes, and you'll find us there. And the other thing that I want to share is we are now on Patreon. So Patreon is a fundraising website. Everything that we do here, we do out of love, and we do from grassroots. And so we ask the community to continue to support us in this work so that we can do even more events and have more things for you. So if you want to join, for every $5 you give, you get to get some cool stuff. You get to ask Effy questions, and she does live videos where she answers your specific questions. You can give $10, $20, and for each amount that you give, you get tote bags and things. You get free tickets, all sorts of cool stuff. So you give and you get. But feel free to ask me questions at any point, ask Effy questions, and we are just thrilled that you are here. So thank you.
Starting with the theme, this month we're exploring compersion. Compersion is essentially the feeling that you get for somebody else's joy that has nothing to do with you, right? So it is actually something that we do all experience. Imagine a good friend tells you they've got a job of their lifetime, the job that they want, and you feel happy for them, right? That feeling. Compersion is kind of what people call that feeling in romantic relationships, in open romantic relationships. So it kind of applies to if your partner, for example, goes out on a date and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I had the best date ever. And, we did all these things and I was so excited. In that moment, can you get in that space of, I am happy for them, for the experience that they've had, which has nothing to do with you, right? So when I did an event on compersion before, and when I did, I sort of went into my usual nerdy exploration mode. And one of the things that I found out, which was huge for me, is it's not a new idea. And it is not just for polyamory or an open relationship. It's actually an ancient idea. It shows up in Buddhism. The Sanskrit word for it is mudita. It's one of the 4 virtues that Buddha talks about. And the English translation is sympathetic joy, right? Which makes so much sense, right? It's not empathetic joy. You're not there with them. It's sympathetic joy. You appreciate the joy that they have. And this is also honored in Buddhism as as being the hardest virtue to cultivate. So we do understand that it's not something that comes easily, right? There are mudita meditations that they're meditations dedicated to helping people cultivate this feeling. And this kind of tie was really interesting for me, that it is this ancient virtue, it's ancient teaching, a way of being that we now apply to these open relationships. And then, so that's kind of what we're going to explore here today. The other thing that people talk about compersion is this being almost opposite of jealousy. Personally, I don't necessarily agree on that, but what I do think that it does is gives you a reflection to be on the other side. I do think actually you can feel, we'll talk about this a little bit about like jealousy and compersion at the same time, but what I think it does do is it kind of gives you a counterbalance. It gives you an opportunity to be like, oh, I can choose to be in this space, or I can choose to be this other space that is available. Sometimes we just don't know that space is available. For me, that's how it shows up for me. But we'll get into all that, but before that, I want my panel to introduce themselves to you. I'll start from my right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric.
Hi, Eric.
As you may have heard, I have been practicing poly for 7 years or so. Sort of discovered it on my own, I guess. I was, I call it like New York City OkCupid window shopping, like I think a lot of people do. And I was doing that for a while, and it felt like eventually it started to feel like I was lying to everyone that I was seeing. Even if I wasn't actually lying, it was, how was your week? It was fine. That's not the answer. The answer is I went to the beach with Bree, and I went, to see a movie with Casey. Like, I wanted to talk about the things I was doing, the people I was seeing. So I kind of just decided to start talking about everybody with. I scared a lot of people away. But some of the people I was dating were more open to that. And then I met someone who brought me to a sex party. And that pretty much changed my life in a way. Specifically, though, because when I was there, I met a woman who is now running that party as well. I started dating her we were dating for a couple years, I think. I ran the party with her. And there's just like the mother load of poly people at that party, but there's a lot of different things that now pull, I think, poly people together. I say practice poly because I don't think it's a thing. I think you can be poly-minded, but I feel like poly is a practice. It's a thing you have to do, and the more when you're doing it, then you become poly. So inherently, by hanging out with other poly people, that happens. Through that 7 years, I became very close with one of my partners who I just got married to in August. What was that? August? One of those. So at some point recently. And through 7 years, we've been through, I think, pretty much every structure that we could have been, where I had another girlfriend before I was boyfriend and girlfriend with her. We were dating, and I had a girlfriend, and she didn't have a boyfriend, where she was discovering dating in our relationship, and then she had a boyfriend, and then the other girlfriend I had, we kind of just transitioned to friends. So then she had another partner and I didn't, and then kind of backwards and forwards, and we've been through it's interesting, we've been through a lot, and we both kind of teach it a lot. I mean, in running large parties with poly people, you tend to talk about it a whole lot. So we've been through every different kind of structure that we think we could find, but then something else happens. That's the first time that happens. So we're constantly learning together, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for sharing. Great. Can I pass it on to you? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Clara. I think you will soon notice that almost like a noticeable accent in me. I'm sure I work so hard at hiding it's not true. I'm Italian. I'll say it right away so it's clear. So let's see. The journey into poly. I think for way before hearing about it, I certainly, like probably many of you as well, I had a sense of, oh gosh, there has to be something different. And why do we make such a big deal about the fact that we may experience attraction to other people besides our primary partner? But I grew up in Italy. I only moved here 12 years ago. So definitely there, even less than here, there was nothing of this kind. So no framework whatsoever. So it's almost like when you don't have the vocabulary for something, it's almost you cannot perceive it, or you can even fathom that there can be something else. So I just had, I actually remembered one, as I was preparing for tonight, an episode where I was reading an Italian novel soon after I moved to New York, and somewhere in there was not a deep novel, just so you know, nothing that I would recommend necessarily, but there was a point towards the end of the book where the protagonist and his partner would end up with living separately but being together, and that was like the first kind of inkling of different possibilities. And I was reading that, I was like, oh, that's cool, that I can see that, yeah, that sounds cool. And then things like that, started to resonate at times. I had a couple of very unsuccessful attempts at articulating this when I didn't have a framework for that. Didn't work well at all. Some people still do not speak to me to this day. And then at some point, actually, I encountered the term for the first time about 9 years ago, and with a former partner of mine. And he had been in a poly relationship, so he said, I was in a poly. What? Nepal. I was like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And it wasn't immediately, oh, okay, there's something that can capture what I was thinking. Now, unfortunately, he hadn't been like overly excited about it, so it was more like, yeah, I was in that, but it was a bit painful and challenging. But aside from that, it was probably one of the first very kind of conscious, or let's call it emotionally mature relationship that I had. And so even though we really were not poly, we navigated our relationship with a lot of transparency and with the idea of, if thing come up, let's talk about it. And so let's not hide from that. And thing did not come up for a while until they did come up. And so eventually I really fell very hard in love with someone after maybe 3 years into our relationship. We spoke about it. We tried, the three of us, not necessarily all together, but one-on-one in some ways. Eventually, me and my former partner transitioned, and very amicably, to the point that I still cohabit with him 4 years later. It's become my best buddy, and he's often here, not tonight, but he's another fox. He's an amazing person. For the records, okay.
Just in case
Just in case. Not gonna name you, but And since then, since that transition, I really went more into wanting to explore this more consciously, and that's of course when I met Effy, because things just happen when you're ready for them. At that point, though, I think this is interesting to mention, there started to be something else that was very relevant to my exploration, which was I started practicing and studying nonviolent communication. I'm sure some of you may have heard that. And I think most people know about that more from the kind of the language model of some form of speaking and in a certain way. And the way I arrived to that was a bit different. And I was taught NVC more as a really, I want to say, as a map to understand my life from a perspective of needs. And so NVC as a practice led me to really deconstruct almost all the assumptions that I had about how things should work and how to make decisions in my life. And of course, one of the first things that came was how to do relationships. And so that also led me to a complete career transition. I was a scientist before. That's what brought me here to the States. And then since about 4 years ago, I shifted. I left my older job, and now I teach nonviolent communication. And it was quite the leap. But that was so important. That's where we met. But it was so crucial because, and I think it informed a lot of the way I approached poly, which was more of, I call it I feel like I resonate with the idea of anarchy, but for me, anarchy means kind of needs-based or agreement-based conscious relationships. I mean, I don't want to, I approach it in a way where I don't take for granted the form that my connections can take, and I allow them or allow the people in them to slowly discover where can we land in our connection. So in that sense, fast forward to now, I mean, I think I more consciously started to walk the poly path maybe, I would say 4 years ago. Because that was happening alongside with my career transition, I did not have a lot of bandwidth to date. Honestly, I felt so shaky, so unstable that the least of the things on my mind was exposing myself to something more. It was like letting go of all reference points. But I brought it into the way I dated. Usually I dated for a couple of years, one person at a time, in spite of still bringing the intention of openness. This is how I wanna approach it. And but yes, with really most of my energy focused on the change in careers. And then it was actually just this past summer, I was like, okay, now maybe, start to feel a bit more comfortable here, maybe opening up horizons a little bit more. And of course, lo and behold, someone appeared right at that point here at Curious Fox. And so it does happen. And so since the summer, it's been really quite a deep dive into more of the real experience of poly, meaning having multiple partners, and for the first time connecting with metamors, so with my partner's partners. And I don't think it's like something after discovering it, there's no way I could not embrace, for me, this way of approaching relationships. And that doesn't exclude, in my view, that then you may, everyone may choose the form that best suits them. So and that, to me, we may include being monogamous if that's a choice. And I love that's very much usually how you present that. So there's a lot more, and I'm looking forward to share all sorts of nuances, but I'll shut up now.
Thank you. You're welcome. Beautiful.
Hello, everyone. I'm LT. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a native New Yorker. I identify as a queer person, also as non-binary and polyamorous. So I try to hit all the boxes so that no one wants to talk to me. So it's like, yeah. So it's very fun. I'm also a pleasure-based sex educator as well. And I teach a myriad of different, I should say lead. I don't really think of it as teaching because I learn a lot working with people. But yeah, so we lead a myriad of courses with my good friend who is a pro dom. And we do kink classes. We do intimacy classes. I talk about compersion every once in a while. It comes up. And as far as my journey relationship-wise, I always kind of reevaluate it. And sometimes I have to remind myself not to discount the time where you feel like you weren't as present, or you weren't doing it as well, or you weren't as emotionally mature. So I think the piggyback off what Clara said, consciously with the poly community and really, like I said, building a community, I would say about 5 years. I like to tell people I've been non-monogamous since I was at least 8 years old. There's context to that. I'll try to make it quick. So I wasn't romantically seeing anyone, but I would always go to my parents and ask them why people only were married to one person. Yeah. So my mom was really big about counter education, I suppose. So I'd go to school, I'd learn something, I'd come home, and she would make me learn something else. So I'd have to study all these different cultures around the world, and then it would come up. So I would ask, and they would just, only answer I would get was, well, bigamy is illegal. And I was like, well, that's not really a great answer, Like most of the stuff that was going on in my community, even within my home, was illegal. So I'm like, well, it's not really like a thing. I was like, that's not really an answer. But I never wanted to have one best friend. I never wanted to play one sport. So there was never a thing where I felt like I needed to choose. So the first experience, I would say, I shouldn't say the first. We'll speed up. We're going. So I've been chasing polyamory. That's how I like to describe it. Chasing polyamory, trying to find a community, trying to find language around it, trying to not force myself to fit in with something that I didn't feel came naturally to me. So I would say 2002, I was living in Atlanta. I'll make it real quick, Effy. 2002, I was living in Atlanta. I met, again, this is a long time ago, right? There was the internet wasn't really popping like that. So you had to meet people the old fashioned way. You had to meet them in somewhere, right? And she was a member of a sex club that was maybe about 15 minutes from my house near this area called Six Flags. And it was right near Six Flags. I don't want to shout out the club. They don't no free publicity. So I met her, and she had said, "Oh yeah, listen, I'm a member of this club." She was very open. She was very free and very liberated. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." She was like, "Yeah, I'm going to this club. Would you like to go Saturday?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." I knew about it. Trust me, I knew all about this club. And I remember calling up my best friend, and I was like, "Hey, guess where I'm going tomorrow night?" And he was like, "Where?" So I said the name. He was like, "Motherfucker, not Compersion." It was not Compersion. He was not joyous. He was not joyous for me. At least not in the moment. And that night, and that really was like one of our first dates, which is interesting. And I tell people, I saw them have sex with someone before I ever had sex with them. And there was nothing came up. Like I wasn't like, oh, this is gross. I wasn't turned off by it. I really was excited about how liberated everyone felt and how free everyone was. And I had some of the best conversations in the back of that place, which is, another story. But yeah, that's who I am for the most part. And I've experienced a lot of different relationship styles. I've gone back and forth. There's times where I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to try any relationship that feels like it fits the partners involved. And I still believe that, just without monogamy. So that's where we are. And I'm happy to be here with you folks.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Elsie. Let me introduce myself quickly. I will keep it short. My name is Effy Blue. I'm a relationship coach. I work with people who are curious about transitioning into or have hit some sort of a roadblock in open relationships, non-monogamy. That's what I do by day. And then this is my passion project. I've been doing this for 3 years. I bring people, like these amazing people, and we pick a theme and we talk about it, and we put together a community of people to sort of explore in their own way. And that's what I do in my spare time. And then whatever is left, I concentrate on my relationships, which is not much time. So personally, I live with a partner, and I've been polyamorous for about 5 years. And similar to most of these stories, a part of me is kind of known that the traditional structure just doesn't work for me. And for a long time, I felt like I sucked at relationships. That's a story I told myself. I just suck at relationships. And then one thing led to another, and I sort of had this like crash into the non-monogamous sex positive community in New York City, and suddenly a light bulb went on. And I was like, oh, it's not that I suck at relationships. I just suck at a certain type of relationship, and that's not my only option. So I was like, oh, okay, I get that. So, and that was kind of the beginning of my exploration. And then, similar to like Clara and NVC, I was kind of really taken by this idea, and a natural nerd, so I went into this deep dive and decided to sort of learn anything and everything that I can learn about non-monogamy, and sort of that led to me passing a lot of my knowledge on to other people, and that eventually led to me into this coaching and then doing events like this so that other people can have that experience of, oh, there isn't just one size fits all relationship, there are other ones too. And then my own personal relationship, I have a life partner whom I live with. My other partner and his wife lives downstairs. We all live in the same building together. It's beautiful and great. We're kind of it's like what people call kitchen table poly, which essentially means that every now and then we get to sit around a table, break bread, and check in and see how everyone's doing. We've been doing that now so my partner who lives downstairs and I have been together for now 3 years. He and his wife has been together for 4 years. My partner who lives with me is moved in a few months in November, and he and I have been together for over a year. And we kind of live in this space, and it's working out for us. And there is a lot of compersion. I think people always ask, like, why does it work for you guys? You're like, it works for you and everyone's thriving. Like, how do you make it happen? Some of it is definitely hard work, and relationships are hard work regardless of what shape and size they come in. They really are. Even in a monogamous relationship, even with your relationship with yourself, you need to put the work in. So in any relationship there is work. So some of it is that we do put the work in, and the other one is we kind of lucked out a little bit. I think dispositionally we're not jealous people. Like it doesn't come up in many areas of our lives. We're also people that have other passions outside, so we have this balance to the relationship. We're not just all about the relationship, so we have these passions and balance, and we also kind of find these moments of joy for one another, and really celebrate what's working and what's happening with the other person. So we're also in tune with the other people's passions. So when good things happen, we're able to celebrate that, and that includes meeting new people, which is a passion of ours, meeting new people in relationships. So it kind of folds in with everything else that we're doing. So we find those moments of joy and celebration in each other's relationships, and that's kind of how it works in our household. And that kind of brings us to the end of the intros. And this is where we open it up to you guys to ask any question that you have.
My question isn't exactly about compersion, but I feel like it's related. So currently I have 2 lovers. Both are seeing other people. One is kind of single, poly, and dating. The other lives with his girlfriend. And they've been together like 7 years and have known each other much longer than that. I'm having no issues with like being happy for either of them. For the one when he's with his girlfriend, the other when he's dating, like I'm not having a problem with jealousy or compersion. But what is happening with me, which I think is kind of related because it's another kind of learned, taught, cultural thing, is the one who has a girlfriend who I've met. She's lovely, adorable. They're a fantastic couple. Like I really enjoyed meeting her and seeing them together, and think they're great. When I see him, we have a great time, and then I wake up in the morning and I go, oh, that was great last night. I feel great. And then I have a thought that is, what are you doing fucking someone else's boyfriend? I grew up with this idea that you never date someone else's boyfriend. You never go anywhere near someone else's boyfriend. And so I don't have a problem with feeling happy for them when they're with someone else, but I do wake up in the morning and I slut shame myself, even though it was her idea to open up the relationship. She's bi and wants to see women and encouraged him to start seeing other people so, she would feel okay about seeing other people. She absolutely gave me the thumbs up and the green light, and we like each other. Like, she has no issue with it, but I wake up in the morning and this historical, cultural stuff comes up like, why the hell are you fucking someone else's boyfriend? Sorry about all the cursing. So I'm just wondering, like, what you guys think about that and how you sort of unpack that other message. It's not a message like compare and despair, oh, they're with someone else, and I feel terrible because they're with someone else. But I feel like it's kind of related.
It sounds like guilt and shame. Is that what you would call, like, is that what you would name?
Yeah.
Those feelings of guilt and shame?
At least shame.
Shame, uh-huh.
I don't feel guilty because she knows about it and she's fine with it. But there is an element of shaming myself, yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is maybe something that in general is how I relate when I catch myself judging myself for something, which is, and this is a bit, again, inherited from the NVC, but there's something about, okay, I catch myself judging myself. What is the judgment trying to do to me or to tell me? And I am in the process of dating also someone who is in a long-term primary relationship, and I have felt at times like, okay, am I just, breaking their harmony, or who's who and what am I gonna do? And I find it helpful rather than, kind of slut shaming myself, translated that I really care for them and I value their connection, and I really, maybe two things. On the one thing, I really want to make sure that they're okay and that there's a sense of care and support. And on my end, maybe I still have to give myself some self-compassion about how much I have judged myself for that. And so maybe there's a deep yearning for acceptance and for, kind of almost like a self-forgiveness.
And I also think it's like, who do I think I am that I'm so powerful to destroy their relationship? Like it's a bit of blowing myself out of proportion in terms of the importance. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of it is that I really like her, mm-hmm. And I really like how they are together. And I value what I see in them as a couple. And I'm like, what are you doing?
And it's almost like in that way I can just own the vulnerability of I am scared that maybe I can mess up. I'm concerned. I mean, I am a vulnerable person that is stepping into something new, but it sounds to me so much better than telling myself, I'm whatever words I can use for that. So I try to see what what needs is that judgment trying to kind of to meet or to protect, and then center on them and seeing what that informs me to do, whether it's communicating with them, or if is there something maybe that's deeper hidden in there. So that's one part. But if other want to add.
Well, I don't know. You said you met her and you think that she's lovely. And I don't know how much the three of you have hung out, but for me, I guess I'm a little spoiled, I suppose, in that a lot of the people I date were a part of a large community, like I said, of people who just hang out all the time. So we know everyone very well. But to me, that's always really, it's differentiated relationships from people. And relationships are things that people have with each other, but each person is their own person, really. Even my partners are not my relationship, but they're their own person. And so the more I think that you can learn about and be a part of actually their relationship as well, that's always been really meaningful to me. Because any other partner that I've had a primary most of my poly life, I suppose. And any other relationship I have has to exist in and around my primary relationship. If it's the more separate it is, the more it feels like it's not a part of my life, right? So if and I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but I think the more comfortable that you are with the both of them and with their relationship and can be a part of their relationship, because you are, you'll feel, not only will this feel better, I think, for you, but for them as well.
I like to advocate shame-free sexual positivity. Another little bubble I put myself in is I also practice relationship anarchy. So what I would say about what I think I'm hearing you bring up is there's a blockage to self-acceptance that happens a lot of times when you first start opening up your relationships or you're meeting people and you're seeing how deep their relationship goes. So yeah, you're maybe waking up and you're saying, oh, what am I doing this for? What am I doing that for? That socially conditioned ideas that have been these pathways have been drawn in your mind for a very long time. So yeah, you're just working through those things. But you should ask yourself, this makes me happy. This sparks joy. I'm able to be open. I'm able to be honest. I'm able to be accepted by these folks, right? This relationship is welcoming to you, right? So we have to practice that with ourselves as well. So I have to be welcoming to myself. I have to be honest with myself and say, yeah, this is what I want. And sometimes it's hard because you're still dealing with, old thoughts. You're still dealing with the community that maybe you grew up in. You're dealing with the family structures that you've dealt with. And that lack of acceptance there sometimes falls onto us when we're alone. And one of the things Eric brought up was about community and overlap. So once you start changing, hopefully, once you start being able to build more of a community, and like he was saying, getting to know folks who view relationships similarly, then you start replacing those ideas. So now the voices in your head go from, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, to, yeah, you should do it. You should, you should definitely do it, right? So once you start replacing your community voices, it changes the dynamic. So I think you're getting there. I think it sounds lovely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that I encourage people that I work with, clients all the time. I call it changing the noise. So the noise that we have around us that we don't realize, all the messages that we're getting is a certain way. And there's a lot can change inside you if you change the noise around you. And that's why the resources that I share with people, it's people you can follow, podcasts you listen to, shows, books, YouTube channels, a bunch of things that if you just want to plug some of that into your life and change the noise around you, including community, so how people are talking about their own relationships, that has changed a lot for me. And, I think I like to have a balance of that noise. So mainstream as well as sort of within the community. And I think we don't realize how much we're affected by that. So, just think about the noise around you. What are you hearing all the time? And tune it in, take control of it and like tune it into what you want to hear.
Effy said, you have to negate the noise that's around you. Okay. And I would say, I would go even further. I would say that for women, it's even more difficult. Because what you were describing is compersion, but for the girl, not for the man, not for your friend as such. So it was a displaced way of, it was empathy for her. And because we have been trained this way, in a way of feeling guilty or being the bad one or breaking up, like the bitch or the witch or whatever you call it, it's very cultural and very hard. So I think that your compersion was not for it should be for yourself, not for her. In other words, that allow yourself to have pleasure, but because you're in a poly part, that the beauty of it is that you're not hurting her because she knows about it and she accepts it. For me, that's the most important part. And that's where the ethics come in, because why we call it ethical slut is because you don't want to hurt nobody because you're happy. So it's very gendered, gender role as well. And it's not easy, but...
It's not, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Yeah.
So I am blessed to be in a really lovely triad. Well, not triad. A partner whose partner I really love. So I've been lucky so far, despite being a Scorpio, not having had a lot of jealousy in this. But the one time I did notice was when I felt like I wasn't full. And this specifically happened when he was traveling. And because of the situation, like he was able to see her more frequently, but not me. And he and I were like able to meet for dinner and stuff, but not really be intimate. So I was feeling like really like I was, being teased and kind of like had to really just stay present to my desire for him, but not be able to do anything about it. Curious if any of you have had that experience of ultimately how do you show up in compersion and loving and giving when you feel like your needs are not being met, and then you have to watch your partner give that to someone else. So that's one. And the other question is, I am also starting to date I'm interested in dating a man that has seemed to reciprocate the attraction, who is aware of how poly works, has a lot of friends who've been poly, and his experience has been that people people at some point always want to close their relationship for a little bit, and has expressed concern that might be, something that might come up. How do you navigate that in the day-to-day when that is a possibility that's really present?
Cool. Thank you. Good questions. Just to sort of summarize, essentially, how do we find the space for compersion when our needs aren't met in a relationship? Start with that one.
I don't exactly have an answer for that, but because I think it's a thing you have to work through. There's no easy answer, I think, for that. What I have found in looking at that jealousy, and you kind of answered your own question there, I feel like, which is just the communication. Mm-hmm. That is almost always the source of problems like that, and almost always the answer that I have found is articulating what you need or what you're not getting, and talking about what they need, and working on some way to make you and them and everyone kind of happy in a way. And that's not always possible, obviously, but the more that it's not just kind of you feeling these feelings. The other really, I think, important thing that I've learned about, it sounded kind of like you were talking about jealousy or like feeling of jealousy, that like J word that people are nervous about. I actually really, I like that feeling, because I've found that what I'm actually feeling when I feel that is envy. And to me, that's a useful feeling, because now I've learned something new about myself that maybe you didn't realize you wanted to drive them to the airport specifically, right? But now you know that, and if and when that happens again, you're able to use those tools to set yourself up for a better if that happens, feelings get hurt all the time, but I think there's a lot of learning you can do and talk about it. Don't hold that in. Obviously, come to a meeting and talk to all of us about it. That's a great start,
Yeah, I love your question, and I resonate with that a lot, as in one of the relationship that is the dearest to me is in a way has, I can call it a triad in some way, and although I'm always so reluctant to labels, but in a way, there are two people that I really love very deeply, and it began more with one of them, and then initially metamor, then became also a partner to me, and that is a very interesting and delicate dynamics in that it's like almost like the 3 one-on-one dynamic plus what emerges from the 3 of us together. And I think one thing that's very, very important to me is that we all pay attention to each of these relationships almost, and because there are needs almost for all of them, and like being careful to name them and to not, we can't assume that they're all, equal. We have different nuances I think in each of our connections. And I think it's important that we pay attention, for example, that we value the one-on-one time that we have, and to pay attention when maybe circumstances do not allow for that, to at least name that, like even in a situation like the one you described, like where there was a discomfort for you and an unmet need, and maybe the situation couldn't change, to maybe just make space to just name that. Okay, there is a discomfort. I can feel that. It's okay. It's gonna happen. Maybe not being scared to. Sometimes like I'm scared even to admit it, because to one of them, because oh my God, does that mean that I don't know, that I love the other person less? But no, it's okay. We're gonna feel things, and I find that at least, and we had recently an experience when one of us brought up an experience of jealousy in an episode, or an imbalance of attention, and we named it, and we kind of even just the experience of listening to one another and really bring a lot of empathy, in ability to just listen. We don't necessarily need to fix the thing. We can just listen, make space, acknowledge. And most often, once that happens, the problem is no longer there.
The other thing for me, it's sort of along the lines of what Clara is saying, is that for me, I keep an eye on like episodes versus trends. And that's important to me. Like just episodes of miscommunication, episodes of like, it didn't feel good, versus trend of I'm not getting my needs met, and this relationship doesn't make me happy. This relationship doesn't bring me joy, right? There is no space for joy, versus here are these like to be human is to be flawed, and here where we like, just we're being human, like we're just miscommunicating and we're being human, and it doesn't work. So it's just episodes, because feelings are going to get hurt. We are flawed. Communication is hard. Relationships are hard. I think, and then just to recognize that it's just an episode, and that we're not drowned by it. We're not defined by it. That we name it in the hopes that it won't happen again, but also realizing that it just might. And as long as it doesn't define your relationship and it's not the trend, I think you kind of just live and work through it. One of the things that I say to people, the ideal is to build relationships that can withstand the humanity of the people inside it. And I think that's allowing for just, we're going to fuck up. We're going to hurt one another. Hopefully we build a shell that allows us to like heal within that structure as well. And your other question was about what if one person decides not to be open? What happens then?
So what if one person decides that they want to change the relationship agreement? It goes back to communication, discussing it, and knowing where your boundaries are and what your needs are. I mean, someone might say, "Hey, listen, I want to close my relationship." And you might say, well, I'm not sure if I want to do that. And they say, well, I didn't mean with you. But right, I mean, yeah, there's an interesting thing. So, I didn't mention it in the beginning. So, I teach a class on compersion, and there's actually a video floating around with me talking about it. So that kind of puts me in a position where people might think I'm like Captain Compersion. But there's a difference, like what Effy said about longing for something, feeling jealousy, feeling envy, or insecurity about your relationships. Now, someone coming to me and saying, I'm insecure that if I go into an open relationship, that I may want to close it at some point. To me, that's like you saying, hey, I want the job, but I think I might quit maybe in a month later, right? So it's a signal to me that, all right, maybe you still have a lot to work on. And it's about seeing not just, is this person attractive and sexy and wonderful and a good friend and all those things, but also, can I be the type of partner this person needs? Can that person be the type of partner I need? So yeah, for me personally, there's, I'm not closing it, but if they decided to do that, I would say I'm always open to discussing our relationship agreement. Things are fluid. And I think if you're open to doing that, then you can communicate around what your boundaries are. And maybe there's some medium there. Maybe that person doesn't want to see someone else, but is happy if you do. So it's just really about talking about what can work in between your relationship, in between the two of you, or the three of you, or the four of you. I don't know how many people are involved in this.
One of the things I find is so special about poly is it's sort of, the labels kind of become a little bit more fluid in a way. Like, at what point are you like my girlfriend? Or obviously I've got the government involved with my wife, but other than that, there's no hard defining terms for things. And I think what's really special about it is that you're able to have a relationship with someone and let it be kind of where you are, right? And people change all the time. This is why monogamous relationships don't work, because people change eventually and they need something different. I would suggest, as people can like close, and this doesn't always apply, because sometimes the relationship structure is like, I don't want you seeing these other people anymore. But I have had a lot of relationships where we were dating and sleeping together, and then we sort of just both became really good friends, and we're still friends today. Or I have a girlfriend and she thinks that she's gay, or I think she is gay. And so I think we're like still my girlfriend, but we're not sleeping together anymore. It's very like, there's a lot of the sleeping together and the relationship don't have to be the same, right? Like, the relationship you have with people can be that. Let it just be that, and it can change as people change, I think.
Yeah. And in line with change, also going into a relationship with a bunch of what ifs, right? Like, what if you decide to change, relationship structure? What if you get hit by a bus? What if you can't go in there with what ifs, ideally. For me, where I think it works is like being present and agreeing on a set of values for that relationship and for yourself and for that relationship, and just showing up present in line with those values and sort of show up that way within the relationship, rather than making up all these like what if, because once you start that game, there's no end to that game. You can come up with a million what ifs, good and bad, right? Things that you do want and you don't want. I think, and it kind of does disservice to the people. It's just a waste of energy, time, and effort that you can use that on being present and connecting and having communications and discussing values and showing up in that way, because there's no value in the what ifs, really.
Just I wanted to add one thing thinking about it. So I have two really good friends, and their partners have been partners for about 7 or 8 years. And they describe themselves as polyamorous. I love them a lot. I'm not romantically involved with them, but they go through periods of, a little bit more closed, a little bit more open. So there is a lot of value to that that's really aided their relationship. So there's times where, Q's mom was really sick, and we really needed to kind of come together, and I had to spend a lot more time, holding space for Q and her family. And at that time, I wasn't dating a lot of people, or my job changed, or I don't feel good about this, or maybe there's children involved. So there's times where you're going to go through different periods of maybe you're a little bit more open, a little bit more closed, right? I think it's not creating an absolute, not creating these boundaries, right? Because we're interested in open relationships. The open part for me is being open-hearted, being open-minded, not so much being so rigid where I'm saying, well, we're closed now. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Are we closed for business? Does it what does that entail? Does it mean you can't watch adult films? I mean, like where does it go, right? So it's more about what does our relationship need, And if someone says, hey, listen, I'm working 3 jobs, I don't have time to see anyone else right now, and maybe you like dating together, and you're like, okay, well, let's delete all the apps and let's hang out for a little while. So I think just, like everyone's saying, check in with your partner. And no what ifs. If you teach classes, everyone's coach what if this, what if this, right? And I'm like, well, what if your cat barked and your dog, and your dog meowed? That's basically my answer to that, or whatever. Yeah.
Question, do you have another question?
I recently exited my first ever poly relationship, and I'm trying to figure out, there's a database term called rolling back your changes. Do I need to roll back my understanding of how poly I may or may not be? Do I need to roll back the Facebook post where I referenced more than 2? Do I need to put a different message out there, given the possibility that I still might be a hopeless monogamous romantic like my ex-fiance was 3.5 years ago? Just all of those questions to the panel, and thank you for everything you've said.
Well, like I said earlier, I feel like poly is a thing you do. I feel like I am poly, but if I wasn't practicing it with other partners, then I would just, I don't know, like poly-minded. I suppose that could be a thing, but if you feel, so I guess then to answer your question is that if you feel like that was the right structure for you, I don't see the need to, I don't think you have to roll any of that back. I would say continue to look for other people that are open. And I guess it depends on what you need. I think you are going to have the answers for some of those better than any, like we would. But it's again, like we were saying earlier, a lot of this is just about the relationship that you have with people and what you need from them. You've learned, I don't know how long your last poly relationship was, but I imagine you'd learn some useful skills about that, which I think could be applied to monogamous relationships as well. Communication and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. It depends on, yeah, sorry. If
Do you have anything to add?
So in part, I think maybe it's, there's a big, it depends, because I don't know exactly. Sounds like, do I understand correctly that you're saying that you're in a way questioning, you're being really poly after the end of this relationship? So has there been something that didn't work out the way you were imagining it could? Is it something in that direction? Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's really, it's all learning. And, I see it very kind of dynamic. And I was recalling something that I think I heard from Elizabeth Sheff when she came here about, you were saying poly is something you do. And she was mentioning how, there's, in a way you can see poly as an orientation and poly as a choice, right? So in a way, for some people, it's something it feels very like, almost like, something that I identify myself with, that once I find it, that's me. It's like how I love, and it's very natural, as opposed to, or not as opposed to, but alongside with also being a choice that, okay, makes sense based on the values that I have. Like, for me, there's like a value of honesty and authenticity and freedom that I just want to kind of champion them for people in general. Then for me, so going back to that, so whether then a particular form is going to work for me, I think it may depend on a lot of different things. Maybe where I am in my life in a certain moment, what needs are standing out. So I'm not sure if I would question completely, like maybe that, is this, I don't see necessarily as black or white, but maybe there's something is going on there that maybe you weren't clearly seeing. So what is the interesting question is, okay, what is that? Is it about how to experience a sense maybe of stability or security or so consistency? I don't know, there can be many things. Once you identify that, then maybe you can see, okay, then what form of relating could support that? What other ingredients do I need maybe to have that without questioning necessarily the label per se? I don't know if it makes sense a bit.
Yeah, so we can get loose here. We can get loose. I'm ready to get loose. Okay, yeah. So, okay. Cool. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up very patriarchal or heteronormative societal standards on relationships. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, and another thing, it's bringing that into your open relationships or bringing it into polyamory, like fuck that noise. Like seriously, you're gonna just recreate that same dynamic each time, and questioning if you're polyamorous or not. Relationships don't work. I mean that, and not like they don't ever work. I'm saying relationships don't work. They don't work out. Sometimes you have a partner and it's just not a good fit. You have an agreement and they just go out and break every agreement. And then you have other partners where you're being asked to do things that don't feel natural to you. So just because I call it a certain type of relationship doesn't mean it's automatically going to work. So there's no fix. There's no like, damn, every time I'm in a monogamous relationship, it doesn't work out. I'm just going to do this poly thing. And then that's not working out, right? Because now you've basically what I've done is I've opened a pizzeria and I'm losing money. And then I open another one a couple blocks down, right? It's just like, well, how you're failing at this business? Why are you opening another? Right? So it turns into that. So I have to look at how I'm approaching it. Like, how am I approaching my relationships? How present am I? How intimate am I? How vulnerable am I? Right? And then in order for me to fully assess where I'm at and what I can bring into a relationship, and then when you start meeting new partners and adding to that, you'll figure out where your edges are. You'll figure out where your bandwidth is, as they say. And I've met people that I'm like, oh, you're so wonderful. And they're like, I'm kind of polysaturated right now. Right. So, that's really self-aware to know that, like, hey, listen, you're seeing too many people, even times I got to pull back because people are like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing Saturday? What are you doing Saturday? What are you doing Saturday? Right. So I'm just like, God damn. Right. So I'm like, well, between one, and I don't want to do that because it's very mechanical. Right. The other thing I would add, not to go on forever, but this kind of got me worked up, in a good way, in a very good way, is, you meet people, we meet each other. We all come into the community to learn. We're all learning no matter where we've been in our journey. But in the beginning, because it's become so accessible, I think nowadays, people are jumping right in. Like they just jump in. I mean, they 2 feet in, they're on this app, they're on this website, they're at Curious Fox, they're at the party Eric's throwing, they're at the pool party, everywhere I go I see them, I'm like, shit, right? So people are like jumping head first, like deep in, right? Deep in, they don't know where their edges are, they don't know what's going to come up for them, and they're just way in, right? They're way in, and you don't realize you're jealous until your partner is like tied up, suspended, there's a flogger, there's wax, right? There's 15 different people, there's a pool, and you're like, what in the hell just happened, right? So I think it's important to to really take your time with it. Really take your time. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in saying I'm poly-minded, or I feel poly as an identity, but I'm not ready for LT to be in the kitchen. Like, just I'm not ready for that, right? So as opposed to saying I need to be ready, and I want to be ready, right? Because we're fearful of doing something wrong. Like, I'm a poly wrong. I'm a bad poly person. Like, if you've probably heard it a billion times, right? If I wish I had $1, every time someone said, I just feel like, I'm just bad at poly. I'm just a bad poly person. And I'm just like, I don't even know what that means. It's almost like someone coming, I'm just a really bad Martian. It's like, what in what context, right? If you're unethical, then definitely you're doing it wrong. That's the only hard line I got, is that if it's unethical, if you're doing other people harm, you're doing it wrong. As far as like, whatever, shit's not working out, I wasn't ready for what I stepped into, then yeah, what you said, you know that you need to pull back, right? And think about, okay, what did I do in that relationship that contributed to it either being not as successful as I wanted to be? Or what can I do for myself to where I walk into the next experience, monogamous, polyamorous, whatever we want to call it, where I feel like I'm setting my boundaries and I'm setting my expectations and I'm being open. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything he says. Yeah. Also, just one little addendum. Poly is a bit of a catch-all, just from a verb, like language point of view. Poly is a bit of a catch-all word. I always what does that mean to you and what does that look like for you is a really good question to ask. Like, I actually agree that personally, I think monogamy similarly, like we say, monogamy, but we still need to investigate what that is, because is sexting somebody cheating? Is watching porn cheating? Even monogamy has some definitions needed, and poly or polyamory or open relationships, even that, you need clarity on what that looks like for the other person. So you might have just come out of a poly relationship, but what was that relationship really looked like, and that doesn't now mean that you're not good at poly overall. It's just that just didn't work for you. So investigate what didn't work for you, and I bet there are things that did work for you. So those are your takeaways, and what didn't work is where there's room for adjustment. So it's to say I'm not good at poly ever, because what does that really mean? What are you not good at? Which part of it that you're not good at? You need to identify that. Does that make sense?
First time Foxer. Hi, panel.
Hey.
Woo.
Welcome.
I recently and all the time have compersion moments, but recently I have a really great one. But I was wondering what some of your favorite compersion moments are, some of your happy poly moments.
It's not exactly a moment, but I remember the first time I really experienced that very firmly. It was it makes total sense, but I was with my girlfriend's boyfriend at the time. They're married now. These are the downstairs partners Effy was talking about. And we're up.
That's one of my moments to the current.
Well, no, this is it. Yeah. I was talking to him, and I was very new to this all, and he was like, oh, I love you two together. That's so, you make her so happy. We were already saying that we loved each other at this point in our relationship. He was like, I love that so much, that you guys, you make her so happy. And I love her. She loves you. You make her happy. That makes me happy. This all so, I'm like, fuck that. That was the first time someone really articulated that to me that way. I love that you love her because that makes her happy and it makes me happy, and that's great. So the moments I have most often are just when my partner is with someone that makes her really excited, and that makes me really excited. That excitement, I'm able, we pull into our relationship. It's sort of a selfish act, all these other things we do, because every other partner, every other relationship really fuels our relationship.
My favorite compersive moment was I was the best man in my partner and his now wife's wedding, and it was so nice. I'm like, it was so nice to be asked to be in the wedding and to be the best man and the ring bearer and to be there, to be included in that way, and just to sort of, even when we see the pictures now, I'm so glad I was there, and I can tell I'm compersive because I can see there's a giant smile on my face. I'm like, and I think for me that was definitely where I really felt I was soaking in it, and it was it felt good. And it was like feeling included and feeling joyful, and it was all of our friends, and I was right there in the wedding. So that's definitely one.
I love a moment that's a bit almost kind of in reverse, meaning that I was seeing that being modeled to me, but I think it's so important. It was so important to be on the receiving end, to see that was possible, and it happened where. So I was starting. I actually hadn't even started dating this person, but something was building up, and I was definitely developing feelings towards him. And he was away, so during that time it was a long distance kind of acquainting. So I happened to meet one of his partners almost like before kind of getting closer to him, but there was definitely a build-up happening, and she was aware of that. And so we met, and I was like, that was really my first true metamor experience, and I was like, well, how's that gonna be? What is she gonna think of me? Oh my God. And we met at an event, and it was adorable. I mean, and at the end of the evening, I remember she came to me and she said, "Oh, you're so cool. I'm so glad I met you." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is possible." And so it was really like the beginning to really pierce the veil of saying, oh, wow, it is possible to support each other as women, loving the same man. Oh, my God, it was amazing. And it was going to happen that soon after that, I was basically going to meet with this man where he was. And when as I was flying on my way there and during when I was making a connection and I was texting this woman, and she basically texted me like best wishes for the connection that I was gonna have a great time. And I was like, oh my God, this is true. It happens. This is possible. So I carry the moment so dear in my heart, and there have been many following that, but I think that that was a very such a powerful blueprint, that this is what I want to experience, supporting each other in that, in a way tapping into, it's so much of reframing from a habit of scarcity that we have, that if I have some, I take away from someone else, and really seeing that the more, experience of love adds to everyone. So, but that's definitely a favorite moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite moment. These are great stories. It feels good. I'm really in love with joy, and I just like people to be happy and experience it. And I mean it sincerely. There's probably two recently. One person was having some like communication issues with their primary partner, and we just started talking about just communication and connection and how to bring up things that we feel and we desire. And then they were using them, and they were like, oh, this is working out so well. And we had such a great conversation the other day, and I feel so good about just being able to talk to you, because then I'm going home and my primary partner, and we're starting to like, get out of that rut, and, and that feels really good. The second one is I'm not really a voyeur. No one in here who knows me should say something contrary to the fact. But I was at a party recently with someone who's maybe less than 6 months into polyamory and everything, and they had this amazing sexual experience with someone who just popped up and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they came to me after. They were like, "You were just sitting there and you were laying there just smiling, and I think at one point you gave me a wink or whatever," and I had this biggest grin on my face. It was so awesome to see, but not the act of sex, because listen, you've seen one doggy style, you've seen them all. But it was more the fact that this person was finally like fully realizing something that they desired. Like, wow, like I want to get out here, and felt like, wow, I came to the party with LT, and it's great. Like, it's fully supportive. I don't feel like I need to censor myself. I don't feel like I need to diminish myself, and I can just be open. And that was what brought so much joy to my face, not so much just seeing it. Yeah.
It all feels very good. I'm just like, oh.
So I feel like I've been in this conversation for about a decade, and I've gone through these periods of being really curious and exploring it in small ways and then being really resistant. So I'm really grateful to be here. And kind of to piggyback off of the last question, I'm curious to hear of stories where you have had an experience of jealousy with a lover or a partner. And is it something that, like, what is it like for you? Do you have an internal kind of coming to a resolution about it, or is it something that you always share with the person that it came up with? I would just love to hear stories about that.
That's to me, super important question. And it's, to me, I think long before getting into poly, I was having a habit of suppressing my jealousy and thinking, oh no, that's not cool. You doesn't have to show up. You're above that. And I think that's been a great learning experience to really change my relationship towards it, meaning I want to feel that if it's there. I really want to make space for that. It's okay, and I actually remind myself, I can't force myself into compersion. It's going to arise naturally as I, the mindset shifts, but jealousy sometimes comes there. For me, I think it's such a different experience probably for everyone, but for me, it comes up as usually as a very kind of gut feeling of fear, really fear. It's like, oh, wow, something is going on. So, I mean, because I have the habit of sensing and things come up very transparently for me, I almost say, like, when it happens, if someone is with me, they are going to see it. It's almost going to be impossible not to notice that. So but the way I approach it is that I just want to feel that, make some space for that. So generally I say something like, oh, wow, I'm feeling something. Can you just slow down for a moment? And I'm noticing I've had some reaction to what you just shared with me. And for me, it's just, I need to breathe through that, feel what is that telling me? Is it, and it can be many different things at times. It can be something related to a sense of self-worth. It can be something related to a sense of safety or trust or security. So the what to do next would depend, but most often is about even just having that space that the person who's with me can witness me in that place and hold. It doesn't have to, he or she, that they don't have to fix me, but just holding my hand for a moment that I'm having that moment of insecurity. And often when with that kind of slowly melts or dissipates. And so we have with one of my partners this thing that we say, like, tenderness alert, before entering some conversation. Like, are you in a space where you can hear that? And it's also about letting people, because we're so used to, maybe to guilt each other in some way, or you need to change something about what you're doing. And so sometimes I need to spend some time to let people know, no, I'm not saying that it's your fault, or, not necessarily. I mean, it may happen that you want to change something, but most often is really just, we're going to have feelings. We're going to trigger each other. It's going to happen. And so can you just be with me there for a moment and see that pain? And then it goes. And if it doesn't go, I keep seeking. What is it what's the message? What's the message? I want to be able to feel that, because if I don't feel that, I don't get the message and I don't know what to do with that. Yeah.
And I find that if you don't get the message, it just gets louder.
Exactly.
Because its job is to be heard. Like the thing with your emotions, or their job is to be heard. And if you don't listen, it just gets louder because it's just trying to be heard. And I think that's, if you resist, it persists idea. Yeah. So I think.
And maybe one part that's important that I think in that is also, once that comes up, to then start discerning how much of that is, coming from an actual situation that I'm seeing, how much of that is coming from a story that I'm telling myself about that. And that also helps me navigate, because sometimes I really realize that something is happening, but I'm telling myself that that's because I'm not enough, or that's because, he doesn't care. And so that about the story, I have a lot of power because I can change the story. I'm telling myself, if it's truly a behavior that I'm concerned about, then it may be need for a dialogue and maybe see if some change is needed. So I wanted to mention that.
Sure. My jealousy experience is similar. It kind of feels like fear mostly. I feel it mostly like pit of my stomach, right? And it's like a twisting motion. I know it enough, and I've experienced enough that I'm not afraid of it. So I just know what it is. I'm like, oh, here it is. And the story part, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, I'm like, okay. And the story part is where it resonates with you most. In my household, we actually use the term, I have a story in my head that. So we will address the story. We'll start the sentence with, I have a story in my head that. And then we'll then share the story. And what it allows is, even if you're saying something like, I have a story in my head that you don't care about me, is very different than you don't care about me. Because the person has space to reflect on the story rather than feel they need to be defensive, right? Especially if they feel like they care about you deeply. And often in these situations, the other person is like, I love you, like, and then I work with people all the time and I see this repeat over and over again. And a good hack that I give them is just to address the story as a story. And it gives people space to be like, okay, there's a story in the middle. Let's get curious about it. Why is it there? How it's showing up? Why is it showing up? What's my part in it, right? And then it can be addressed in that way. So often, for me, the sort of the way it goes is like, oh, I'm feeling discomfort. Oh, I necrotize discomfort. What is the story? Then I actually go ahead and say, I have a story in my head that da 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 da. And that's how and then once you sort of address it, it dissipates really quickly for me. Once you get it out, and the other person is like, huh. Yeah, that sucks. That's a really shitty story, right? And you're like, yeah, it's a really shitty story, right? And then you can have that space to talk about it, and no one's getting defensive, no one's feeling not heard. So that's kind of how the jealousy thing shows up for me. Yeah. Anybody else want to share their jealousy?
I try to, like I said earlier, I really try to look at that feeling as envy. Because again, I think that envy is a useful feeling and something that I can respond to, whereas jealousy is kind of like, I'm supposed to have this, I don't have this, that's bad. There's kind of no conclusion or no nothing to go off of from there. I used to feel it most with like other men, like at parties, like dating a girl that I'm interested in, or like two girls on top of him at a party. Like, man, and then that's when I started to learn, like, this is something that I desire. Like now I see that, and he helped me articulate that. I'm gonna set that up for next time, right? That's a useful feeling. Now I can respond to that. The one time that I feel envy that is harder to respond to is when for example, my partner has a boyfriend and like they're able to share love with each other, and I don't have that at the moment. And that's a bit harder to set up, right? It's really weird being like in a relationship looking for a relationship. That's very complicated and harder to fix. I don't really have a good answer or solution to that other than, it just supporting each other. And yeah, I don't know. Again, like I said, with in 7 years with my primary, we've been through every sort of different structure as like what the other relationships that we've had and what we've both needed and been going through. And we're still exploring new things after 7 years. So yeah, that's the one difficult thing that comes up. But
envy and jealousy, and people are just like sometimes it's sort of confusing. The way that I make the distinction is jealousy is I want what you have, like I want what you have, and envy is I want that too. So that's a good way to kind of think about it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, everyone? So instead of like, I want what you have, and I want what you have, and I kind of want it, and I don't want you to have it anymore, I want it, versus, oh, I want that too. And that's kind of envy,
Yeah, I'm glad you articulated that, because I view jealousy as coming from a place of lack. Like there's something missing in my life in different areas. Not my personal life, but someone's personal life that feels jealousy. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I've not felt jealousy, I don't think ever. I think I have felt insecurity in past monogamous relationships when I was much younger. But I don't feel jealousy. There's times, and I say what I feel. Like it just comes up. So if someone says, oh, me and Eric are going, you don't mind if I use your example? Because it's not a real example. But let's just say, oh, me and Eric are going to whatever show. I'll just say, oh, I'd love to go to that show. Right? And they'll go, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying I would like to go to the show. Not that I don't want Eric to go to the show and I don't want you to go to the show with Eric. It just pops up. So whatever just pops up, I just kind of claim it, as opposed to saying, fuck Eric. Right? Because to me, that's jealousy. Where you're like, yo, fuck Eric. I hope he falls down the steps. Can't go to the show. I hope the show gets canceled. See, that to me that is like some real jealousy, as opposed to saying, I feel like I'm missing out on something, right? Because there's nothing else maybe for me, right? Because I know if I don't have a chance to go to this show, I can never go to the show, right? Because I'm relying so much on someone else fulfilling holes in my relationships. Like maybe I don't have good friends. Maybe I'm not building community. Maybe I don't feel unity with my housemates. Maybe I don't feel connected to my brother or my sister. I don't feel like I can reach out to anybody, right? So I'm starting to feel insecure because the person that I feel like I need to be there for me is fulfilling their life in many ways. Right. And I need to step back. Okay, well, what's missing in my life? Why I'm glomming on to this person's relationship? But I have nothing to add because I know I really don't feel jealous.
You don't feel jealousy?
No, I don't.
That's funny. I have a last question, unfortunately.
Hi. So I'm what you would call the pivot in a V formation. I'm dating two partners. I've been with, and I love them both very dearly. I've been with one partner for over a year and a half now. She has a husband that they've been together for over 10 years. And my other partner I met in the past 7 months, the one sitting next to me. And, in those 7 months, we've negotiated to become primary partners. So my other partner is very supportive of this and is very consciously has been very vocal and supportive of this. But at the same time, has been going through a lot of feelings. And feeling certain senses of loss, and even though our relationship is it's not shrinking, or access to each other is not changing, but there's still feelings that are coming up. And in me being the pivot in the middle, I'm finding it sometimes difficult to figure out how much information about my two partners' feelings should I share with each other, because this is sometimes triggered some cycles of, oh, well, why is she feeling upset? And then that triggers the other person to get upset, and then it creates a vicious cycle. So I've been trying to stop the cycle. And I think I've done a pretty good job in that we all had cocktails last week and had like a nice sit down and, everybody hashed it out. And I feel like that's progress, but how can I break the cycle? How can we break the cycle and also facilitate a culture of compersion in our little polycule?
And sorry, can I also add to that? I think this cycle of like her insecurity kind of like triggers me feeling threatened. And I don't think that I am feeling jealous at all, but I'm not necessarily, and I have had feelings of compersion definitely between the three of us. Generally it involves rope, but I don't necessarily have the feeling of compersion that I would like, or the particularly, let's say like they have a day, I don't feel jealous that they're together, but I don't necessarily always feel like joyous about it. And I guess it's like, for me, overcoming that cycle that we're going through at the moment, I think that's kind of what's getting in the way of me feeling the compersion that I would like.
I don't know exactly what the relationship is between the three of you, like it's how close you feel together. I mean, sometimes I'm just not feeling somebody. I mean, it wouldn't matter if they were dating them or not dating them. Sometimes I meet somebody, I'm just like, I'm just not really feeling this person. I just whatever. I just don't connect with them. I can actually relate to part of the story. Don't pillow talk. So pillow talk is like, you have to, I think one of the things I would suggest doing is talking to partners about what they're comfortable with you sharing with another partner and what they're comfortable with hearing. I'll give you a personal example. I I didn't do that one time, and I was just kind of not complaining about somebody, but just talking about my inability to understand where things were going wrong in my communication with another person, with someone else I was dating. And literally there was pillows, right? So there's pillow talk. And they had not met yet. But I was just like, I just don't understand. I'm like, something's happening, something, I don't know, everything, whatever. And I did that for probably too long, unconsciously. And then the partner I was with was like, I don't know, just don't ever introduce me to this person. And I was like, oh shit, right? But I didn't ask. And I ended up apologizing. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask if you were okay with hearing about this. I just dove right in because I'm like, oh, I care about this partner. I love them. I want to share with them. I want to talk to someone. And I just started going, right? And I created a situation where it soured a relationship that didn't even have a chance, right? Because they're an individual outside of me, right? Just because I'm, whether I'm a hinge or a linchpin or a V or whatever, regardless of what the term is, it doesn't mean that these people are not autonomous and they don't have their own agency. They have a right to develop a relationship with each other outside of me influencing that, right? They may like each other more than they like me, and that's fine, right? But I have to allow that to happen. So I think the only advice I would give you is ask, say, hey, what are you okay with me sharing about our relationship with other people and that person, and give them space to answer. Don't say, I need to know now, I got a meeting, Uber's outside. Say, hey, I want you to think about it. It's not necessary. I don't have to talk about it. I don't need to talk to them about it. Maybe find another friend, call Eric. Talk. A non-biased person is always better. Someone else that's not emotionally attached to a relationship is better. Just like you said, now you don't feel the compersion you want to feel. Sometimes I don't feel I can't, it was recorded. But anyway, sometimes you don't feel the high you want to feel, right? And that's perfectly fine. So yeah, no pillow talk.
Also, compersion is something you cultivate. Like literally in Buddhism, like Buddha says it's the hardest virtue to cultivate, and it is not something that you just like, I want to be compersive and then you're compersive. Like you have to cultivate it and not force it. And just see the joy, just recognize the joy or the lack of it without judging. I think that's the other part of it. And like also investigate the story, right? What's the story that's in the way of you feeling the compersion that you want, which is that sort of made me think. I was like, that's what I was thinking on. Like, what is the compersion that you want to feel? Like that seems very specific. So if you're that specific, there's a story somewhere. So I would like look at the story of what's in the way, and also just realize it takes time. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes exposure. It takes your fears. Like for me, it just needs to. The things in my head are scarier than the reality. Like the stories I make up are always scarier than what's happening. Like the jealousy I feel is always scarier in my head than it is in reality. So what I need is like exposure. Like I need to face that fear, realize it's no way as scary as I think it is. And over time, it like calms down and there's space for compersion. So like you guys are doing this, you're so new, the relationship is new, polyamorous is new in that particular dynamic. Like you just need to give yourself some time to let those fears like collect new data, and let those fears like face those fears, and eventually they'll like die down and there'll be space for compersion. So patience really is what I would say. Yeah.
I think it also, to me, it makes me think about two things. One is that, in my experience, that the experience of compersion grows on a sense of that my needs matter, and that is kind of perceived and shared by all the people involved. Like everyone's needs matter, and when I sense like that genuine interest, where we want to find a way to support that, is really something that then kind of creates the ground for that genuine cooperation. But then creating the ground is not like a given, like as Effy said, there's some deliberate cultivation, as you say, and the other thing that was coming to mind was to really usually when I almost, I want to say, every experience of jealousy to me often reveals that I am kind of melting and let's try to say that, my needs that I have with a specific person that I think is supposed to meet them. So if I'm able to kind of step back and really, because in my view, needs, I'm talking about really qualities of experience that I'd like to have. So if I'm able to kind of step back and get into that perspective, okay, but there's this need, and I can nurture that and find ways to meet that independently or also in other ways than that specific person, that also help me usually. I sometimes experience jealousy when I am too attached to I call it my favorite strategy to meet that need. And it's great to have them because we have relationships for that, because they work well to meet our needs. But to be able to experience that I can still care, meet that need in some way, then can allow me to let go a bit of maybe the expectations on other people. This is something to, yeah.
So, like I mentioned earlier, the labels become a little bit blurrier when you're able to date anyone in a way. The way that you described, you have a V now, right? But you guys are now primaries. So like I have a primary relationship. I kind of, if I were to describe the shape of all of our, it's a spider web. I have a relationship with every single person I know. Some are more serious. Some are, in transition. But different people structure their relationships differently. Some are like more anarchy about it and, non-primary. I've had a primary for 7 years. And to me, the shape has always been the two of us with every other relationship coming off of it. And again, there's some of them are W's or X's or, some kind of pentagon or crazy shapes. But I think what you need to look at in that is what is that other part of the V, what is that connection point? And what does she need? And if she's feeling insecure or like nervous about it, or it's because the other half of the V, the shape is changing and that connection is changing in a way. And so I think you want to really just connect and make sure you're on the same page about what she needs and what you need from that relationship. Like I said, because it becomes very blurry as, like we're boyfriend and girlfriend and monogamous and that's that, right? Well, as soon as it can be anything, then it becomes very difficult to articulate and to define things. So the more you can kind of define what she's needing from that, and then you can put the work into this other relationship, which congratulations on becoming primary, and still keep that other one healthy. I think you want to work on both.
And we're actually even over time, so we do have to wrap up. Thank you so much. So I have a couple of announcements and a bunch of thank yous because there are a lot of people who work hard to make this happen. As of today, our Facebook group is now searchable. For a while, we're secret, so it was hard to find it. But Facebook changed their privacy settings, which means we can have the group without revealing who's in it. So we still get to keep everyone's privacy. Come and join the Facebook group. The conversation carries on there. We're there. We watch it all the time, and happy to connect with you over there. Jackie, did you have something to add? Yeah, go ahead.
To your point, right. So we couldn't get to all the questions today, but if you have questions that didn't get answered, there are a few different ways you can get them answered. One is office hours. On Thursdays, Effy is going to be answering questions from the group. And so if you have a question, you can reach out via Facebook, you can reach out via Instagram, get us your question. She's going to answer questions. And then also, if you are supporting us via Patreon, there are opportunities for us to do Google Hangouts and to answer specific questions there. And we answer Patreon questions first. And so if we want to do that, so there are different ways for you to get in touch with us if you have more questions.
Thank you, Jackie. And before we leave, I have a first and foremost, thank you so much to my panelists. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. This wouldn't happen without you, so thank you very much. Yes.
episode was produced and edited by Thomas Kavanagh. Thanks to Dave Saha, who composed our intro music. Special thanks to Jackie Miesler, Laura Holland, and the New Women's Space in Brooklyn, New York. Until next time, stay curious.
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 Stay curious.